Let's be real. Marketing for your company can feel like a full-time job on top of your actual full-time job. You think about hiring an agency, that's too expensive. Building an in-house team, that's too much of a hassle. What about doing it yourself? Forget about that. That's where ProMode changes the game. It's an AI-powered marketing platform built for B2B businesses that handles all of your marketing. That means the blogs, social media, emails, SEO, all of that at 10 times the speed that an agency can do it. And here's the kicker. It costs just $2,500 a month, and it has zero headaches and no hidden fees. And if you're skeptical about that, just try it risk-free with a 30-day money-back guaranteed. If you're tired of marketing getting in the way of running your business, head over to our friends at ProMode and finally get marketing handled without the stress. And don't forget to use code KCBC when you sign up to waive your $5,000 onboarding fee. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Kansas City Business Cast. I'm your host, Michael Reisinger. Hey, you've already heard some messages from our sponsors. Check those folks out from ProMode, Silverstone Bookkeeping, and Black Drip Coffee. These are real business owners in our city doing amazing things. I have an awesome special guest today. I know I say every guest is special in their own way, but truly, Adam Tank is on the show. I have never had somebody that has accomplished what he's accomplished in the way he's done it. And I'm just so excited. I'm geeking. Adam, thank you so much for coming on KCBC, man.
Thank you for having me. I have tried to get invested in the local community since I moved back after growing up here. I left for many, many years. And it's an honor to be able to talk to the folks in Kansas City and tell my story.
Absolutely, man. So before we kind of get into it and talk about, your company, your book, what you've learned being an entrepreneur, I also want to dive into, personal life a bit, because that's how you've kind of lived out your own mission and advice of how you're recommending people consider living and all that. I want to give you a special guest. It is from one of our sponsors. Okay. So we've got the team from Black Drip Coffee. They have been so generous to give every guest on season 5 a free bag of their Renegade blend. Okay. So have you had Black Drip Coffee before?
I don't think I have. No.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to make sure that I get you the information after the show. We'll get you a bag of this for free, no charge. And then you can see what all the hype is about. Okay?
Very cool. Exciting.
So,
thank you.
Huge thanks to Dan and Sharon. And then obviously everything that they're doing with Porterhouse KC, raising up future generations of entrepreneurs. All right. So Adam, I just like to tell the guests like how I met, or I like telling my listeners how I met the guests that I'm having on the show. Okay. And we were introduced because I put out a post on LinkedIn, said, hey, I'm looking for founders and, movers and shakers in Kansas City, connections, holler at me. I get a message from our friend, Ashley Surratt, who I have known and worked with her before in the past. And I know if she has an idea of somebody that I should meet, I need to get right on it and check them out. Okay. So you and I get introduced through LinkedIn. I send you the intake form and you get it done in like 7 minutes. Not only do you get it done in 7 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever it was, you sent me your headshots, your logo, your availability. And I was like, see, this is how I know I've got my people coming on this show. When there is that level of enthusiasm and engagement, you don't even know who I am, dude. All you know is I'm this guy on LinkedIn with a suit and a professional headshot that Ashley's recommending you talk to. And so that's how we met, man. And in true fashion, what's so funny, because I did read your book, Luck by Design, went through the whole audiobook yesterday. I just listened to it on 1.5 speed. And kind of took some notes. And I did that because this was getting delayed and this arrived today. But as I was reading it and I was thinking about, the examples you have in there, examples from your own life where you have actually embraced you call them catalysts, right? Unexpected things. I'm thinking, you know what? This guy finding out about this podcast was an unexpected thing.
Spot on. You're exactly right.
He leaned right in.
Right.
You're exactly right. Man. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I am not, even calling myself an author feels a little weird because that's not been a part of my career. So I have been an investor. I have been a technology entrepreneur. I am a technology entrepreneur. I spend, 60, 70, 80 hours a week building a software startup. And so when people say, oh, well, you're an author, I'm like, yeah, I guess technically I am. I mean, I did write a book, which is pretty cool. But this book and the ideas within the book are things that have just been swirling around in my head for probably a decade or more. I'm a huge reader. You can't see it on screen right now, but I've got bookshelves all around me. Like my desk is covered in books. And so I knew I always wanted to write a book. But the question, of course, is like, well, what do you want to write about? And as I thought about the most meaningful, impactful events that have happened in my life, the things that have really set me on the trajectory that I'm on today, and I started talking with those about other people, I started to realize like we all have these little moments in our lives that we couldn't have predicted that completely changed the outcome of where we're at and where we're going. And so to me, it was more than my own experience. So many other people had these experiences. And I was like, you know what? There's got to be something to this. There's got to be something that can be studied. You know, I'm a microbiologist by degree, so the science guy in me is just geeking out about this stuff. I'm like, there has to be more to this than just a fluke. Like luck can't just be random. So the more I dug in, the more I read, the more I talked to people, the more it kind of came together. Here we are. It took me about probably 14, 15 months to get the book pieced together and get it published. And now it's out there. Pretty cool.
I was going to say, I mean, and I truly do mean this. This is not because I'm sitting here with the author, but the last time I read a book that had this type of impact on me, it was Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. Have you read that one?
Wow. Yes. Wow.
And her whole thing in that book is like, when you say yes to one thing, you eliminate literally hundreds of thousands of other possibilities. Yet you open up hundreds of thousands of new possibilities. And as I was reading this, because the subtitle is The Science and Serendipity of a Well-Lived Life. It just such a bold statement to say it's not just serendipity. There's actually some scientific, probability and things that come out of this. And so for all of us like engineering minded nerds out there who sometimes struggle to dream, or like we feel like so often you'll hear engineering minded people say stuff like hope is not a strategy and all this other stuff, and like but there absolutely is like science behind optimism too, and so man, but as I was reading through it, and I was reading about, obviously you go through your own personal life experience, you go through, you have the example of Charlize Theron there. Stephen Hawking. And so you break those down, but where I got the most impact was just getting to know you too, like walking around in a favela in Rio and like just like fearing for your life, right? And hitchhiking and was it Driver Garrett and Friend Garrett?
Correct. Yes.
Like just but it reminded me too what it does. I think what the book does, not a spoiler alert, but I think some compelling reason to read it is that I think as everybody kind of gets into this, they will remember times in their life where they just kind of took a chance, or circumstances weren't what they planned it would have been. Turbulence being a feature, not a bug. So I'm gonna be.
You were paying attention, man. You were actually paying attention. This is good.
I was picking up what you were putting down, right? And so I'm so inspired by that. I wonder too, like when you write a book like this, what feeling do you have now looking back on it? So like you wrote this 2019, correct?
No, this was last year. This was published last year.
I think 2019.
No, it's all good.
I must have found a podcast episode for 2019, and I'm getting some transference there. So you wrote it last year. Can you talk about some of the lessons you've learned in writing this book? And you also did the audiobook. You sat down in front of a microphone for God knows how long to record the whole thing.
That's grueling, by the way. That is grueling.
That's what I've heard. Yeah. So
man, yeah. For anyone that's considering going down that path, writing a book, but then of course recording the audio.
Right.
Make sure you are committed to doing it yourself and understand why you want to do that, because if you're not a voice professional, oh my goodness, like kudos to those folks, because sitting down and reading for 4, 5, 6 hours and trying to keep your sanity and having to repeat lines. And there's parts of the book that are in foreign languages that I don't speak. And so I have to, try to do my best in those. It's a challenge. But in any case, it was so good to get the physical copy in my hands. That's sort of what you always dream of, is like actually having it and putting it on your bookshelf and saying, I have this thing that I accomplished, which is wonderful. I also look back and think, damn, there's stuff I would change without a doubt. And it's because some of the people that I've mentioned, things have changed for them. And so like if their story continues and I want to be able to share what's happened beyond the story that I wrote about in the book. And then in other times, I'm like, man, I could have restructured this. I think it would have been more compelling, or maybe people are getting stuck, or what I really was worried about is it's a little too sciencey in some parts. And so some people are going to get kind of lost in the, nitty gritty of, so we talk about some really wild physics and science and psychology and all that kind of stuff. And I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. So part of me is like, maybe I should have dulled that down a little bit. But on the other hand, it's like, you know what? You just got to be proud of what you do. I'm proud of the work. I'm proud of how it came together. And ultimately, everyone's going to have a bone to pick with some part of it. You can't make everyone happy. So that's that.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's always going to be the critics on the outside, and then the critic on the inside is the one that seems to
Yeah, no joke.
maybe because he or she lives there, right? In our minds, like everybody that even in podcasting, which you've got your podcast. What are we talking about? Which because you're in the water industry, and we'll talk about that a bit too. But like, I think that is one of the first battles, right? Is to just do and just execute and actually get it on paper, and then there can be a conversation about making it better, right? But if you do not actually put the pen to paper or fingers to keys, right? Like you will actually never know. And I feel like too, that is a big theme in this book of, actually just kind of embracing or learning to embrace. That's the other part, is that it's a journey. Like no one is just going to just wake up one day and all of a sudden embrace all the unpredictable things that are happening to me. In fact, that'd probably be an inadvisable way to live, right? But like at the same time, like figuring out like, whoa, I think this might be a moment to challenge me. Or I wonder if this is a moment where I can use this situation, which has presented itself, yes, out of the blue and unplanned and a total inconvenience, to actually change something in me, allow it to do something good, or at least have the perspective that something good can happen from this, right? And so no, I just so appreciate that. When you were actually putting it together, did you consult with people, or like what was that whole process like? I've never talked to somebody about how to like create or start their book.
It's, as I mentioned, I'm an avid reader, and there are a number of authors and books that were extremely influential for me in my late teens and early 20s. Books like Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, Chip and Dan Heath, those guys, Adam Grant would be another. Those were the types of authors and books and style that I was going after for this book. And I had started taking notes on some of these thoughts 10 years ago. I had this file of quotes and stories that inspired me and my own thoughts, and was like, maybe someday I'll do something with this. And as those continue to sort of marinate in my head, and as I started finding some science behind it and stories of famous people who have had these moments, it kind of naturally comes together. And then I would also tell people, if you're considering writing a book or going down this process, have someone who is a professional that can help you, guide you through the process. Trying to do it on your own is no easy feat, and I don't think you're going to get to the outcome that you want. So I actually came across a phenomenal editor, developmental editor, Amanda, cold outreach on LinkedIn. She's here in Kansas, interestingly enough. She's in Topeka. And this is what she does for a living. She helps authors figure out the type of manuscript they want to publish and get them on track and keep them on track. And so with her help, it took about 12 months and we got the final book out there. And so it's, there's a lot of writing, rewriting, editing, reorganizing chapters and all of that kind of stuff. But as long as you have someone who's in your corner helping you through it, things tend to go a little bit easier. So don't be so egotistical as to not think you need help, because I would highly recommend it.
Absolutely. On that subject too of seeking help, you've built your own companies. You've learned a lot being in the business space, right? What are some of the lessons that you've learned in picking the right people, picking the wrong people? You mentioned you found, I'm sorry, was it Amanda?
Amanda, yes. Yep.
Amanda, you found her, like she's your trusted advisor for the book, right? You've had to find countless others like in business. What are some ways that you have learned to figure out who's the right fit to partner with you in these types of endeavors?
Yeah, sure. So it's a wonderful question, and there is a tremendous book that explains my philosophy behind this much better than I can, and it's called Who Not How.
Who, not how.
Who Not How. So a lot of times entrepreneurial types, folks that have a small business that are sort of these go-getters, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get things done. Our minds always go towards how am I going to get this thing done? And we get so wrapped up in the mechanics of how we're going to do this thing. Most of the time it's about how we ourselves are going to do it. And the question instead we should be asking ourselves is, who can help me do this thing? And the reason is that by bringing other people in that can help you do the things that primarily you don't enjoy doing, you get to a better outcome and you get there a lot faster. And it took me a long time to realize that there are things I hate doing as a business owner, as a startup executive, that other people love. Other people absolutely love. I'll give you a simple example. I was talking to a woman who was working with a customer of ours. This was a couple of years back. And we were just having a conversation. I was asking her, you work for this big company. Do you plan on staying there? What are your plans? She was really talented. So I was kind of feeling out if maybe we could hire her at some point. And she said, yeah, what I'm doing now isn't really my dream job. What I would really love to do is manage a CEO's schedule. Yeah, right?
No, it's awesome. I've recruited people like that, but
yeah, that's exactly what I say. Like, you could not pay me enough to ever do that. And there are so many other things you could not pay me enough to do. But for some reason, I feel like I'm always the one that has to get it done. But if you find someone, the who, that can help you do these things, your business is going to do much better. Your personal life is going to do much better. So you asked, how do you find these people who are the right people to help you along? If you have a true vision for what you want to do and achieve for your business or your personal life, your professional life, and it's a clear picture, and you have a decent understanding of the paths that need to be executed on to get there, you can find someone who loves to do those things, and you just let them run. Give them the North Star and let them run, and you'll be so blown away by what they can do.
Absolutely, man. Said like a true pro, somebody who has lived it. We've had a couple folks on the show. We've had a lot of good bootstrappers on the show, and we have people that during the time they came on the show, they were in that struggle to figure out how to, we've talked about it like a closed fist, right? Age old, like you can't get out of the trap of, the do it yourself mentality.
Out of the cookie jar.
Yeah, unless you open your hand.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of for a lot of people, it's just as nauseating as everybody's favorite Mike Tyson quote, which is, everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face. Side note, my favorite Mike Tyson quote is, you have to do the things you hate like you love them to build discipline, which in the example that you just made, no, don't do the things you hate because someone else loves them.
Exactly. Yeah, Mike, Mike is in some sense, I guess boxing could be a team sport because you're going to have trainers and coaches and whatever else. But like at the end of the day, it's you in the ring and you can only rely on yourself. So yeah, like you're the one that has to put in the time to do the push-ups and the sit-ups and all of that. But in business, it's different. Like none of us live in a vacuum. Even if you're a solopreneur, which is a common word now, you're still relying on your software vendors, a different technology stack, like whatever it is, it's not an individual sport.
Absolutely not. And so, we have had a couple of folks on the show that like they figured that out. Even if it was 2 years ago, they figured it out and their businesses are absolutely thriving, dude. Like they are actually experiencing growth that like they never even dreamed about. And most entrepreneurs, big dreams, right? Like big dreams, wide open view. That's part of what removes from the traditional mindset, or just assuming that life can be on a set of train tracks, where I feel like with what you've done and what you've learned in your experience and what you've been, gracious enough to share in this book is saying, hey, there's a detour. I'm gonna see what happens with that, right? I'm gonna go off the beaten path. You even talked about too, like how I think right out of your college program, you went and worked for a major global company and figured out like I think there was like a humbling moment or something, and you realize like, wow, I need to grow. I have a lot to learn, but also like I think I need to go out on my own, right? And kind of make a not even just a name for yourself, but a purposeful path that you could get on board with and kind of believe in. I think that the companies that are doing the best have obviously figured out that secret sauce to let people in and understand. I've never heard somebody say it like that before. The things that I hate doing as an executive, somebody else loves doing.
Yes, they love and are far better than you, realistically.
Absolutely.
Which for many people that start a business, myself included, you really have to check your ego, because especially if you were grinding it out in the early days, small team, or maybe just you or maybe one other person, and you had to do everything from the beginning and you did it well enough to get your business to a certain point, there absolutely is this feeling, well, I could do that. I can absolutely do that. But that only works to a certain scale. And the time to bring in help, I would say is much earlier than you probably think it is, realistically. And so there's another good book that was impactful for me, which is called The E-Myth.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah,
over
and
there.
there's excellent. Yeah, so there's this there's a revised version. I think it's the E-Myth Revisited, that tells a story of a woman who opens a bakery because she enjoys baking for her friends and family, and they're like, oh, you're so good at this, you should open up a business doing this. And she realizes that running a business baking pies is far different than baking them on nights and weekends for your friends and family, and all the trials and tribulations of how to actually build a business and not just sort of take a hobby and make it bigger, because they are very different things.
In Kansas City business owners making $100,000 a year or more. Let's talk about your finances. They could be a mess, and that could cost you big, right? Are you wasting hours in QuickBooks? Are you misclassifying transactions? Are you making tax mistakes? Obviously, that's all money down the drain, or worse, an IRS fine. Silverstone Bookkeeping has helped 50 plus businesses clean up their books fast. Now, for a limited time, they're offering a QuickBooks diagnostic review and tax savings session for just $150. That's usually a $500 value. Within 48 hours, they'll flag 8 to 25 key fixes and uncover potential tax savings for your business. Give them a call at 913-732-4151 or visit silverstonebookkeeping.com now. Absolutely. So kind of expanding that, because now, so you're at Transcend, right? And
Correct.
What type of product does Transcend make? Can you define it? I know you can say it more concisely than I can, because I understand the principles, but
Sure. It's super niche and it's very engineering, geeky, nerdy. We develop and sell software that automates the design of water and wastewater treatment plants. Right. That is at the simplest level. That is what the company does.
Right. And so everything that goes into a water and waste treatment plant is lots of pipes, lots of machines with motors and generators and power that if it fails, there needs to be redundancy. And so there's wiring, there's security, there's fire alarms, there's all those things. And so the software helps designers basically execute those designs. Correct.
At a conceptual level. So we're thinking the big stuff, like the stuff that drives most of the cost in projects. So concrete, steel, site, like the amount of land that you have available. Those are the things that we're helping engineers think through in the earliest phases of projects. But the reason that it's important is because, and this is where most people consider me the water guy. That's what I'm known as online. That's how people know me. Most of my friends, like, they just know me as the water guy. So I'll hop on my water soapbox for a second. Our water infrastructure is in horrible shape. And this is across the country, and for that matter, around the world. So I won't bore you with statistics, but it's something like 20 to 30% on average of the water that we treat that goes to homes and businesses for consumption is lost between the treatment plant and your house or your business. So literally somewhere between the plant and your home, in that series of pipes and whatever else it goes through, that clean water is just lost to the environment. And it's a sobering statistic. It's frustrating as hell. And I want to do everything in my power to make sure that we secure water for our generation and the future generations to come. And the way that I believe we can do that at Transcend, and the way we're going about it, is by giving the smartest people, the smartest minds of our generation who are working on these infrastructure projects, the time and the tools they need to be able to do their job more effectively. We can't possibly solve all of the water related challenges we have in our society if we keep doing things the same way we have been for the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, which used to be pen and paper. Now it's on computer screens. In some cases, it's still paper. It's still drawings. It's still, stacks, reams of stuff in a treatment plant tucked into a corner that was created many, many years ago. We have to do something different. And so for us, it's bringing people into the digital age and giving them the tools they need to be successful.
Absolutely, man. And I think too, that's one thing that I kind of gathered from the podcast. What are we talking about? Which I will link as well. But I love how you go into those topics. You also talk about just the way to advocate for like what you're saying, the information, the sobering statistics. And so you've talked about how to market what water companies do and what utilities do, which helps in the way that they operate. It helps with public awareness. It helps in recruiting, because if you can find people that are as passionate about it as you are, or people that, I would imagine you talked about how you stumbled into water, right? And
exactly.
You have a deep, deep understanding of water now too. I caught that as well. Advocating and then also inspiring people to sort of step up or come into these careers. I totally get it from an efficiency standpoint too, because my background, lean process improvement, we always focused on the 8 wastes, right? And the waste thing, especially with water, is such a big deal. Like that is, it's literally, that's our most important and precious resource on earth, right?
Yes.
And
and we don't think about it. We take it for granted, right?
Sure.
So Water One probably serves most of the people who are listening to this podcast in Kansas City. They're definitely the biggest supplier in the metro region of clean water. When we think about the amount of effort, and effort is time, it's money, it's engineering that goes into ensuring that every time you turn on your tap, water comes out, or you flush your toilet, it goes away and you don't have to think about it again, is just unbelievable. But the only time typically that we hear from someone at Water One or our local utility is when something goes wrong. Or they're trying to sell you like an insurance policy for your pipe that goes from the main to your house, right? I get those all the time.
Yep.
So we're not talking about water in a way that inspires the public to rally around it. But if you think about in Kansas City, some of the most beautiful spaces that we have, and like places people encourage you to go, for God's sakes, we're the city of fountains. How are we not talking about water? It's part of what makes the city so unique and so much fun. And so, you think about, stroll down Ward Parkway and you see all the fountains, but then of course you also see the creek. Or you go to Shawnee Mission Park and enjoy the lake.
My favorite
there.
Park, man.
See, and so much of it involves water, not to mention the fact that typically the first thing we do in the morning, whether it's brush our teeth, use the restroom, take a shower, brew coffee, it all involves water. It's such a fundamental part of our lives. And the fact that we don't do it justice is both frustrating me, but also inspires me to continue doing the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. And so at Transcend, when I looked at your company photo, how many people do you have on staff at Transcend?
About 120. Buddy. Yeah, it's been a ride.
That is
5 years old,
incredible.
120 people. Yeah, started with about a dozen, late 2019. So
it's just incredible. And just a little bit of a pivot there too. So you are the co-founder. Okay. So you had you and one other gentleman who kind of started it. As you've been, we talked about selecting talent and people and advisors around you. How have you selected executive leaders to add to the company? And what sort of justification do you need as a co-founder to add another executive position? Like what goes into that exactly as well?
I'm a big believer of, so this is part of Stephen Covey's Highly Successful People, the 7 Habits.
Yeah, buddy.
One of which is begin with the end in mind, which is probably my favorite one. And I think about it all the time. And so that it's simple. It's simply when you know where you want to go, you can work backwards and sort of reverse engineer how to get there. And when you set up, whether it's quarterly milestones, yearly milestones, in our case, when we started the business, we did a 3-year sort of visioning exercise, and you have that vision in mind, you can, I'm not going to say easily, but you can more easily figure out when you need to expand the team and bring on people who can help you achieve those goals. So it kind of goes back to the conversation of like, at some point, and it's pretty early on in the journey, if you want to grow, you got to bring in other people to help you, because that's just the way the world works. And so for us, it was Ari and I doing my co-founder, Ari and I doing most of the marketing, the sales, a lot of the finance work, pretty more or less everything that wasn't product related, because neither of us have a software development background.
Very interesting.
Yeah. And so then once we had our, initial set of early customers, then it became clear, well, now we have these customers, so we have to find a way to service those customers. So we're going to need someone who can come in and help us manage these accounts, because I can't continue to do this forever if I'm expected to also grow and get more sales and do these other things. So some of our earliest hires were people that could help manage our customer base. And then we figured, okay, we have some ideas about what's working from a sales point of view, so let's bring on some sellers to help us grow the business there. And then, of course, once you have more sellers, then you're also going to need more people management, and you're going to need finance professionals, and it just sort of, spools up from there. And so you keep that end in mind, sort of work backwards, and then you set up. In our case, we set up quarterly milestones on top of a 3-year plan. And those milestones aren't just, hey, hit this number of revenue or do this with the product or this many customers, but it's, we need to hire these people, and here are the milestones that we're putting in place, that once we hit them, then that basically unlocks that next hire. That's how we're thinking about it. But I'm very open to ideas, especially for folks that are in the business of bringing talent into companies.
Yeah. I just love, I got to tell you, as somebody who has also an HR and recruitment background, the fact that you have a goal that unlocks the next hire, and you don't just say and panic and say, we need more people. What are some ways that you see transcending, I just thought of that. As cheesy as it sounds, I'm sure you guys probably do that.
There may or may not be a reason why the name is Transcend.
So how are you, not only you're making it very efficient for engineers and people who work in water and wastewater, but how are you guys sort of also advocating and in a way giving back to people who maybe they'll never buy your software or ever even touch a wastewater plant? What are some ways that you guys are finding that purpose and taking it further?
Every single month, and on the front page of our website, if you scroll down, basically, I don't know, one scroll of a mouse, that's super scientific unit there, but one scroll of a mouse, you will see a number that is called the number of people impacted by our company.
I saw that.
And it's a big number, and a lot of people are like, that's bullshit. Literally, I just got the impact numbers yesterday or the day before from our analyst, and we have reached 394 million people. I think it's 394. Might be 396, but I think it's 394. 394 million people impacted by designs run in our software. What does that mean? What that means is that every time somebody runs a project in our platform, there is a chance that infrastructure will be built. So it's not a one-to-one, because a lot of people are using the software to look at variations of things and try to optimize cost and do a whole bunch of stuff with it. But they're trying to come to the best outcome for the utility and ultimately us as taxpayers. So whether that's minimizing the footprint of the site, so we're not, building close to people's homes, whether that's bringing in a technology that's more innovative to treat wastewater that reduces the energy consumption of the facility or maybe the carbon footprint of the facility, can enable water reuse. So you can actually treat the water to the point where it can be either directly injected back into the drinking water system or be used for gray water, or garden type applications, that kind of stuff. Regardless, when somebody runs a project in our software, there's a chance that infrastructure will be built. And we have basically a factor that says, all right, for every one design that's run, here's the percentage possibility that this is actually going to be built. And then, because every facility has a certain volume of water coming through it, we also have a calculation for how much water you and I use on a daily basis. And then it's pretty simple. We know how much water that plant is going to treat. We know the average consumption of people who are drinking that water or that
Which is
wastewater is getting
what?
treated.
Can you take one quick moment to say, do you know the average amount that a person consumes?
Man,
And I'm sorry.
man, this is terrible. I should know this. I do
No.
not know it off the top of my head. Yeah, I do not know it off the top
You
of my
got
head.
an analyst who can tell us, right? Like maybe, hey, if you're listening to this right now, take that tangent and go out and research it. What is the average?
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so you were saying, so you know the possibility of the model being built.
Correct.
If it is built, how many people it will
serve. Yep,
yes,
exactly.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Right. And then it's if it's built and it serves this many people, then that means this many people are impacted by the design run in the software. And so we work internationally, right? Over 20,000 projects have been designed in more than 70 countries. Some of these places, folks don't have any infrastructure at all today. Others do, but it's being rehabilitated. In either case, we do it for water and wastewater, and then also power. So we entered the power industry as well. So we measure the amount of people that now have access to a renewable source of power from our software. So that is always top of mind. We mention it in every single monthly email. I mention it's on the front page of our website. We send the reports to our investors. That's every day what keeps me going.
I love it. I also realized that my interruption was a catalyst. I wanted to see how you respond.
Oh, I literally just recorded a video about how we do this calculation, and now I can't even remember what it was. So
set it and forget it, man. I mean, it's like just get it out of the hard drive. We can only store so much, right?
Yep, there you go.
No, so okay, yeah. Obviously, you can motivate. You can motivate your team members by going to that. I just always get so curious when I'm talking to folks like you, right? Like, so you're a very, motivated person, very inspirational person. You draw, obviously, you've got, hundreds of pounds of books behind you. And we know that when we read books, it's like an unfair advantage on the world, right? Like we are learning something that somebody else has walked through. It's a big deal. Who do you so we know you're an inspirational guy and we know you've read some books. Who do you have in your life that kind of challenges you when maybe you're not feeling motivated, or you're wondering why you started a certain project or whatever it is? Like, who do you go to, man? Who's the iron that sharpens your iron, basically?
I mentioned him in the book. His name is Bill. He was a former professor of mine at Kansas State, and has basically become a second father to me. Just an unbelievable mentor. I mean, I almost get emotional talking about him just because he's such an incredible human. And when I think about the person that I hope to become and that I'm actively working towards becoming, he is the guy that immediately comes to mind for me. He lives in Kansas City now. So he used to live in Manhattan, but he lives in Kansas City. So I get to see him. Yeah, shout out Bill. I'll definitely send him this after the fact. I'm sure he'll love hearing about it. But he is someone who, when I think about who is someone who can make the biggest impact on your life and why that might be the case, and I would encourage people listening to this to think about who that person is for you. The traits that come to mind are twofold. The first one is unconditional love, which is so hard to do as a human being. It's so hard to do. But I remember hearing this funny quote, and I'll probably misquote it, but it's something like, be the person that your dog thinks you are. So your dog always loves you. It doesn't matter what you've done, when you did it. You could have yelled at him, you could have, whatever, but they're always coming back into the room with their tail wagging, always happy to see you. Like, that is unconditional love, and that is 100% what Bill is for me. And then the other part is that he's also my biggest cheerleader. So there are times when I entered, a competition, or I had a job interview, or I started a new business or whatever. And he was always in my corner, regardless of if the odds were going to be stacked against me, or he thought it was a terrible idea. He never would have told me that, by the way. He might have encouraged me to sort of think a bit differently, but he never would have outright said, this is a terrible idea. And so that combination of that unconditional love and then being the biggest cheerleader, it's a lethal combo, and I'm so fortunate for it. So Bill, when you listen to this, thank you.
And that's so cool. Is there anything that you've been surprised by too? Thinking about things that you've been through where, maybe you thought it was going to be a certain way, but you learned by taking a catalyst or embracing a catalyst.
So the first thing I'll say is that you can huff and puff. I literally have this conversation today with my co-founder as part of the business. We made so many mistakes early on in the history of the company. And we were on a call today and we see the same ones being repeated. And we're like, damn it, how is this happening, right? We should have figured out a process to ensure that these didn't happen, or we clearly didn't communicate in a way where, these mistakes are going to be avoided. And I literally typed today, and I was like, we have to let people come to their own conclusions. And if they're going to be mistakes, make their own mistakes, because that's the only way the lesson is really going to sink in, that people are going to learn and that they're going to feel like they have more skin in the game, to be honest, and more ownership over the process. And so I would say the same thing goes for, your daughter. Same thing will go for mine. Like, I did plenty of dumb shit when I was a kid and a teen and a 20-year-old. And now, in my 30s, approaching 40, that's never going to stop. But we have to make our own mistakes. That's just part of it. Like, your life is your own life, and that's it. And we're here to provide counsel, try to set up those bumpers, if you will, on the bowling lane. But at the end of the day, like, people are going to make their own decisions, and that's just how it's going to be. So when I think about, in a couple of these I mentioned in the book, the hitchhiking story would be a great example of this.
So good, dude.
A lot of people are like, you're an idiot. Like, hitchhiking? Like, you could have been killed. And I'm thinking, the person that picked us up is the one that should be afraid. They don't know who I was. They didn't know who my friend Garrett was. We could have been anyone.
Well,
They're the ones that could have been in danger.
You said in the book, you were unkempt. And
we were nasty.
Big ass backpacks on.
Yes.
Couple of scrappy young dudes, probably, in good enough shape to both double team somebody and take them over, leave them for dead in a ditch and steal their car.
Yes. It's spot on. And I mean, there's so many stories from that adventure that I could share. One I will mention now that's not in the book, and that was surprising to your question earlier, like how things turned out differently than you would have expected. We had so many people pick us up and take us to places that we couldn't have anticipated, but so many people pick us up that really went out of their way to do it, and were not in a position where they should have been picking someone up because finances were tight and they didn't have gas money. Or I remember one woman, she had her 4-year-old daughter in the car. She was on her way to a birthday party, and she drove us an hour out of her way to get us to the next place, just because that's what she wanted to do, knowing that she was going to be late to this party with her 4-year-old daughter. We had vans full of, I remember this van full of women that we were standing on a corner on an on-ramp trying to get a ride. And they literally rolled down the windows, threw money at us, and yelled, "God bless," and kept driving.
That was in there.
That one is. I
remember that. Yeah. They're like, "God bless you," and you couldn't give it back because they literally threw the cash.
Yeah,
out.
literally.
Like, am I gonna let this money just blow away? No.
Yes. Yeah, because we didn't need money. We just wanted a ride. And
dude,
I was continually blown away by the generosity of random strangers being willing to pick up these two unkempt dudes who were just trying to have a good time, ultimately. And we hear a lot of negative stuff these days, tons of it. If you pay any attention to any mainstream media at all, by and large, it's all negative. And I just wish people knew, and what was inspiring to me and was not intuitive when we started on the journey, was that we are all so similar. We all want the same things. We want people to love. We want our health. We want education. We want our safety, right? We all want those things, and we have so much more in common than we do different. And so when I've chosen to embrace those catalysts, and I think when other people choose to embrace theirs, those are the types of insights that you're going to see, because you're putting yourself in sort of a precarious position where anything can kind of happen. And so your brain is at this point where it's open to new ideas, new experiences. And that's what will change you. That's what's going to transform you.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. Most people, when they see that there's somebody in need that truly needs help, and they actually have a switch that goes, what can I do right now to help them? I'm going to do this. And they're not overthinking it. So you actually give people this opportunity to bless you too, right? And then being open to that, it's so big, dude. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the fact that we need to talk about this too. But like you've mentioned, your volunteer experience. So Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Kansas City. You're also a foster parent, yes? What led you to your life to become a foster parent? And then how does working with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Kansas City, how does that help as well?
I am a firm believer that we have one life to live. And my biggest fear in life, and I honestly do not have many, if any, except for this one, which is that I don't want to regret the life I lived when I'm on my deathbed and I think, what the hell was this all for? I should have done something different. I could have done this. I could have done that. There's another quote I read many, many years ago that basically said, like, hell is you after you've died looking at the version of yourself that you could have become. And I think about that all the time. There's so much latent potential in all of us. And oftentimes it's a catalyst moment, which in many cases is a person or people that have come into your life that can help you unleash that potential. And that's what I want to try to be for other people. And so whether it's big brothers, big sisters, or the foster youth that come into our home, for whatever reason, I don't know the specific, like, there's not a single moment in time where I was like, that is what I want to do. I just feel compelled to want to give back to the community in whatever way I can. And both my wife and I are aligned that this is a great way for us to do that. And it's honestly, it's kind of been a theme. So I was a Boy Scout growing up in Kansas City. Obviously, a big part of that is service-minded, servant leadership. In college, I lived in Mexico for a summer in an orphanage teaching English because I wanted that experience living abroad and I wanted to do good while I was doing it. You know, when I lived in San Francisco, I did a bunch of volunteer work in prisons and helping folks that were leaving prison to get back in prison, doing mentorship, but then also as they were leaving prison to get back on their feet and get reintegrated. For whatever reason, that's just something that is of interest to me. And I feel like I've got a skill set that can help people sort of achieve the things that they've always wanted to. So for me, it's really been as simple as that. But yeah, giving back, you have to give back, and you don't want to regret sort of being selfish your entire life. I think it's really important to do that for the world and for society.
Absolutely, man. How do you recharge your batteries, man? Because you're going, 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 going. So, like, what personal systems, habits, processes do you have to keep yourself sane, dude? Because so often when people meet people like you, or like I've been asked lately with the podcast and my full time gig in my business, where do you find the time? Right. And the way I answer that depends on how much sleep I got and also who I'm talking to and what the context is. But, dude, how? How do you do it?
Oh, who, not how, right? Who can help me recharge the batteries? That's that, and that, to be honest, has been more of a recent sort of revelation for me. So similar to me paying for professional help with the book, I have now paid for a trainer that will help keep me on my fitness journey. So shout out to a Kansas City business, Front Door Fitness. They're phenomenal. Check them out. Really legit group of people. Pay for that. I pay a lot of money for books, more than I care to admit, and that my wife would want me to admit to. But reading keeps me sane. It's a way for me to sort of escape, if you will. Writing is also another way. So for me, like, some people, it's just brutally painful to have to sit down and write. For me, it's an escape. So, like, despite being a busy startup founder and dad and all these things, like, writing for me was like stress relief, because I don't watch sports. Sorry, Kansas City fans. Like, I don't watch Netflix. I don't, right? That's just not me. So for me, writing is that outlet. Those are some of the ways for sure. But I also feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky. I'm a pretty grounded person and constantly reminding myself, like, tomorrow's never guaranteed. You got to enjoy it while you can. Again, you have one shot to live, and you just got to enjoy the journey, you know?
Absolutely. As I've told you, and as our listeners are gathering from this conversation, this book had an impact on me. Listening to your podcast, kind of going down the rabbit hole, I do this. This is like my weekly podcast ritual. I do a super duper deep dive, right? Literally water, right? Diving. I wade through and I swim through all the information, and it really gets me into the world as much as I can be of the guests that I have on this show. But I was literally thinking about this whole concept of luck by design. I'm so appreciative of just knowing you and what you've been documenting about your life and through your company, because it had a profound impact, and it might have changed the course of my year this year, for all I know, with all the things I'm doing, bro. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. That is meaningful. And when I think about the reasons I wrote the book, my hope was chances of you making real money from a book is very slim. And it's not something I want to do as a career. I'm not going to be this career author pumping out book after book after book. So my hope was that if this just reaches one person and it has an impact, my job here is done. And that's, I'll kind of sort of spoil it, but maybe not entirely. That's sort of the conclusion of the book, is that when you take action on these catalysts, not only can it have a profound impact on your life, but on the lives of so many others, not just in this generation, but potentially generations to come. And that's very meaningful to me. It's crazy when you start to think about these things. In the book, we talk about it, the butterfly effect. Some people may have seen the movie, but it's like, what's the one thing that then led to this chain reaction of events that got you to the final point? And what I would conclude with is that these moments are the single biggest opportunity you have to make lasting change in your life and the lives of others. So you have to recognize these moments when they happen, and you got to understand that they are unbelievably powerful. And you have an opportunity to make significant positive change in the world if you choose to. And I hope that you do.
Absolutely. I hope that all of our listeners are just as inspired as I am right now. Adam, it has been so cool having you on the show. Anytime you want to come back, brother, we would love to have you back on the show, man.
Thank you.
A hoot, dude. All right,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you again, Adam, for coming on KCBC. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, go learn about water. Go learn about Transcend. Check out Adam's podcast. This is a mover and shaker here in your own backyard in Kansas City. We appreciate you all. Thank you so much.